Hi there, Kalyn here with a Paper Smooches card tutorial for you. I'm going to be using the Wicked Nautical stamp set, the Duo Die 2 die, and the Uncharted Waters paper collection from Glitz Design. So here I'm taking a scrap piece of paper from that collection and just lining up on the card and marking with pencil marks where I'm going to trim that piece. So now it's all trimmed out, and I'm going to be picking out some pattern papers to do little strips at the bottom of the card. And I knew I wanted to make this a little bit more masculine, so I'm picking out some nice black and white colored patterns. And I already had this perfect strip of pattern paper ready, so I'm going to be using that. And then I'm going to be taking the other black and white print from the collection and trimming that down as well. So now that the background papers for my card are all set, I'm going to take that frame die, which is, like I said, called the Duo Die 2, and it's going to hold my stamped images, which I'm going to be stamping the oars that I pointed to on the set. So first I'm just going to cut out the papers that I'm going to die cut. So I'm taking just a couple more paper scraps from that same collection, and then I'm going to die cut the frame using those. So now I have the frame cut out in kind of that distressed cream color, and then I have the oval cut out in kind of a quatrefoil gradient pattern. But they're both really subtle, and that's what I wanted. I like really subtle textured patterns to just add a little bit of interest behind my focal point. So now I'm just getting that oar stamp all prepped on my block, and I'm taking some scrap white cardstock that I have. I always use scrap pieces if I have them, just to get rid of them and use what I have. So then I'm taking some classic craft ink from Paper Tray Ink, inking up that oar stamp and pressing it down on my white cardstock. And now you'll just see me do the same thing one more time. I wanted to add some dimension and deeper color to these oars, so I'm just taking my Tim Holtz ink blending tool, as well as the Distress ink in the color Walnut Stain, which is a nice deep dark brown, and I'm going to apply that ink to a clean oar stamp, and just almost on half of the stamp and then a little bit at the top, and then I'm going to put that over top of my original stamped image, and you'll see that it gives it a nice bit of kind of shadow and just deepens up that image nicely. So now I'm going to do the exact same thing on the second oar. And here you'll see, I just think it gives them such nice dimension and a little bit of texture too. So now I'm going to just be fussy cutting these oars out of the cardstock and getting them ready to place on my card. Now I'm going to be taking the anchor image from the stamp set, and I'm going to stamp that on the oval piece of the frame. That way it just lightly shows behind the oars. Now I'm taking some Hero Art Shadow ink in soft green, and I'm going to stamp the anchor in that color first. Now I'm taking some Spring Rain ink from Paper Tray Ink, and I'm going to stamp the anchor one more time over the top of the first one. I just thought that the first one was a little bit too green, and I wanted something to kind of match the color of the patterned paper on the card background. Now I'm going to take a sponge dauber and some fine linen ink from Paper Tray Ink, and I'm going to just lightly ink around the edges of that frame. And now I'm going to be gluing the background piece and the two bottom strips to the card. You'll see around the edges of the card I have a ton of little stamped flags cut out, and that's because I thought I was going to do a little banner with those on this card, and I stamped them and cut them out. I tried placing them on it, but I just really didn't like the way it looked, so just ignore those because they will not be featured on this card. So now I'm going to be taking the You Anchor Me sentiment stamp from the set and just deciding where exactly I'm going to place it. Then I'm taking some Distress ink in Black Soot, which is just a nice basic black color, and stamping the image down. So now I'm going to take the heart image from this set and I'm going to stamp it in between the oars using some red royal ink from Hero Arts. I just wanted a little pop of color on this card, especially since I decided to forego the yellow and orange flags that I had originally planned on, and plus it's a Valentine, so I figured a little red won't hurt the card. So now I'm taking some red and white baker's twine that I got at Paper Source, and I'm going to be cutting a notch in the side of my card. That way I can run the baker's twine through it and have it line up nicely with those 2 strips of pattern paper. So now I'm going to take the outside of the frame and use my Tombow Mono Multi glue and put a nice coating of that on there and adhere it down. And I'm going to do the same thing with the inner oval part. So now I'm taking some foam adhesive squares and I'm going to put those on the back of each oar. And because the tops of the oars are so skinny, I decided to cut in half one of the small adhesive squares. And this is a good tip if you're using something that's really thin and your adhesive squares are just too big for them. Just go ahead and cut them in half, and they slice really easily. So cut them to whatever size you need and then just put them on the back and you'll have a perfect little adhesive spot for your die cut. So now you will see me just adhering the 2 oars in a crisscross fashion right on top of that anchor stamp. I really hope you've enjoyed creating along with me today. I think this would be a great anniversary card or just a nice masculine twist on a Valentine. So be sure to check out the description box below for all of the stamps and dies that I used.